system of regulations. Broadly speaking, air transport operations are regulated in three ways. So first, A is internationally scheduled routes are assigned on the basis of agreements between governments of the countries concerned. So sa airlines, ang kanang kung if ever mo travel internationally, so na dyan ay mga agreements between governments sa kanang sa usa ka country nga ilang travelan, if kuan ba dito, safety ra ba dito, okay ra ba dito nga mo travel sila. Second is letter B, international scheduled airfares are now subject to less and less control to some airlines are free to set their own fares. Governments can still intervene however where predatory pricing is involved. So same gihapon nga kanang ang kung i-travel nila internationally is kanang kuan bitaw sila kanang control sila sa usa ka airlines, control sila sa usa ka country nga ilang travelan ngadto. If okay ba dito nga mo travel sad sila, then next is the letter C is national governments approve the license the carriers that are to operate on scheduled routes, whether domestically or internationally, the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. So, ang national government, mao ni siya ang mo-approve and license nga ang usa ka airline okay ba nga mo operate or mo travel an nga country both domestic or internationally. Kanang okay ba sila mo travel an nga place like sa domestic sa within the country or sa internationally without the country. Nga kanang safety ra ba sila nga mo travel ana dira, okay ra ba nga mo travel sila dira nga place. The 5 freedoms of the air. Further legislation concerning passenger aviation resulted from the Chicago Convention on Civil Aviation held in 1944, at which 80 governments were represented in discussions designed to promote world air services and reach agreement on standard operating procedure for air services between countries. So ang the 5 freedoms of the air kay kanang dito giheld sa Chicago Convention on Civil Aviation in 1944 nga gi-representahan jud sa 80 ka governments para pag-promote sa world air services. Then sa ilang pag-meeting, there were 2 outcomes of the meeting: the founding of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, now a specialized agency of the United Nations, and establishments of the so-called 5 freedom of the air. These privileges are 4. First freedom, the right of an airline of one country to fly over the territory of another country without landing. So, rights sa usa ka airline nga mo travel to another country or to fly over the territory to another country bisag dili pa sila mo landing. Second freedom, the right of an airline of one country to land in another country for purposes of refueling and maintenance while en route to another country, but not to pick up or disembark traffic, passenger, cargo, or mail. So, ang second freedom is the right lang gyapon sa airline nga mo travel to another country or mo landing to another country for special purposes. Mag-check sa ilahang mga maintenance like refueling and maintenance, then kanang mo proceed na pod to another country. Bisan pag dili sila mo pick up og mga kanang passengers, cargo, or mga mail. Third freedom, the right of an airline of one country to carry traffic from its country registration to another country. So, ang third freedom pod kay the right pod sa usa ka airline nga kanang mo travel to another country para to registered sa ilahang airline. Fourth is the right of an airline of one country to query traffic from another country to own country of registration. So, ang fourth freedom pod kay the right of an airline pod nga mo travel to another country to registered sa ilahang airline para na sila own nga registration. Fifth freedom, the right of an airline of one country to carry traffic between two countries outside of its own country of registration as long as the flight originates or terminates in its own country of registration. And just this. So ang fifth freedom pod kay the right pod sa usa ka airline nga mo travel to another country or between two countries outside of its own country of nga naka-registered na ang ilahang airline. The move to greater freedom of the skies. Other freedom not discussed with the convention but actually pertinent to the questions of rights of operation have been termed the sixth and seventh freedom. This would cover A. Carrying passengers, mail or freight between any two countries on an airline that is of neither country but is operating via the airline's own country. B. Carrying passengers, mail or freight directly between two countries on an airline associated with neither of the two countries. So, ang first is kanang carrying a passengers with mail or freight between the two countries. Basta naka-own siya sa operating via the airline's own country. Then, ang B kay directed jud siya nga kanang muadto between two countries. While a handful of countries expressed a preference for an open skies policy and regulations, most dividing controls an international air services agreement to which more than 90 countries became signatories provided for the mutual exchange of the first two freedoms of the air, while it was left to individual bilateral negotiations between countries to resolve the issues. The convention agreed not to regulate charter services, allowing countries to impose whatever individual regulations they wish. Few countries, in fact, were willing to allow a total open skies policy of charge. The role of the IATA. For many years, effective control over airfares on international routes was exercised by the trade body with more than 240 airlines members. International Air Transport Association (IATA) representing 94% of all leading airlines. The aims of this organization have been to promote safe, regular, and economic air transport to provide a means of collaboration between the air schemes themselves and cooperate with governments, the ICAO, and other international bodies for the promotion of the safety and effective communications policy and regulations of air transport. So, ang role sa IATA is kanang siyang magkanang promote sa usa ka airlines or kanang maghatag og regulations sa usa ka airlines for the safety flight sa mga kanang passengers ug sa mga kanang nagtrabaho ana nga airlines. Mao ni ang magkanang hatag og mga rules, mga guidelines, mao ni ang IATA. Philippines Regulation of Air Transport. Policy making for the Philippine civil aviation industry started with Republic Act No. 776 known as the Civil Aeronautics Act of the Philippines, passed in 1952. The act established the policies and law governing the economic and technical regulation of civil aeronautics in the country. It laid down the guidelines for the operation of low regulatory organizations, the Civil Aeronautics Board or CAB Economic Regulation, and the Civil Aeronautic Administration CAA for technical regulation. The power and functions of the two bodies were premised the policies set out of the industry in the Act, two of which dealt in the area of competition as follows: promotion of adequate, economical, and efficient service with a carrier at reasonable charge, without unjust disseminations, undue preference or advantages, or unfair or destructive competitive practices. Competition between carriers to the excess necessary to assure the sound development of an air transportation system properly adapted to the need of the foreign and domestic commerce of the Philippines, of the postal service, and of the national defense. So, ang Philippine Regulation of Air Transport kay na policy ni siya for making the Philippine Civil Aviation started at Republic Act No. 776 known as the Civil Aeronautics Act of the Philippines. So, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or the ICAO, is a specialized and funding agency of the United Nations tasked with the planning and development of safe international air transport. So, ang kaning ICAO kay kanang natas ni siya sa kanang para magplano og unsay kanang development sa usa ka kanang airlines nga safety ara iyang pag-travel to international air transport. Then, the Civil Aeronautics Board is a government agency of the Philippines attached to the Department of Transportation, tasked to regulate, promote, and develop the economic aspect of air transportation, and is the agency of the government mandated to regulate the economic aspect of air transportation, and shall have the general supervision, control, and jurisdiction over air carriers, general sales agents, cargo sales agents, and air freight forwarders, as well as their property. So, ang Civil Aeronautic Board sa usa sa government agency of the Philippines nga mag-regulate or mag-promote to develop the economic aspect of air transportation. So, that's all for my topic, ma'am.